District. The school board is elected to be the overseers of the educational system in the community. And their charge is to make sure that the educational system provides the best education for the kids in the community so that they have opportunities in the future. As well, they are to oversee the financial donations that taxpayers make to the district and the careful use of their funds. And so we're here tonight to try to keep both of those in perspective and to come up with some solutions to our structural deficit. Perhaps you've seen this before. I'm sorry if it's too small back there, but this is our 5-year projection. And currently we're in year 11-12. And at the end of the school year, this year, we're anticipating a $6.6 million budget deficit. We're spending $6.6 million more than we anticipate receiving in revenues. As you go out in 12-13, that goes to $9.6 million. In 13-14, it's $10 million. In 14-15, it's $11.7 million. And then in 15-16, it's $12.8 million. Below that, you can see we've had some fund balances that have been saved for a rainy day to keep the district in a strong financial position. But those deficits are quickly eating away at our budget reserves and will leave us with very little reserves at the end of the 5-year period. So our task really is to come up with ideas. The board has given the administration the task to come up with $9.6 million in cuts that we can preserve from our budget so that we can work towards having a balanced budget in the future. But we had 3 kind of operating principles that we were working under as we were trying to establish these solutions to our structural deficit. We wanted to retain the high quality of education and programs for the kids. We believe that education is the heart of the community, and as education goes, the community, so goes the community. We want to preserve the financial strength of the district and use financial dollars that we get from taxpayers and from the state and the federal government wisely, prudently, judiciously. And we also want to remain responsive to all stakeholders. We know that there are tough times out there for many people right now because of the economy, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best job with the dollars that they're contributing to the school district. The process thus far has been that my cabinet, which is the 5 executive level administrators in the district, got together and we brainstormed some ideas, used some that were used in the past, came up with some new ideas. The second step was then to take those to the building principals, share them with the building principals, and determine from them the impact that those solutions would have on programs and students in their particular school buildings. We also wanted them to kind of give us a prioritized list of which ones would they accept more easily and which ones would they just really not be able to live with. We then talked a little bit about those things at the Finance Committee, and then we're at step 4 right now where we're sharing the possible solutions with stakeholder groups. We shared them with the Teachers Association, we shared them with the Support Staff Association, shared them with the Custodial Association. This afternoon we shared them with the staff in general, and tonight is with community members and parents. And what we hope to do is not only share those ideas, but discuss them with you and see if you've got some other ideas that we maybe haven't contemplated that will solve our structural deficit and keep us in a strong financial position so that we can move forward in a good way to serve the students and the community with their educational needs. After we're done at the February 8th board meeting, the administration will come with a recommendation, and at that meeting then the board will look upon our recommendation and make a decision themselves. So I want to share with you first a list of some possible solutions that we've come up with and with some dollar amounts attached to it. As you can see, we started at the top with the $9.6 million deficit that we projected. Remember, these projections are based upon our best assumptions of how things are going to play out. Now, we have in the past been pretty close with our expenditure side of the forecast. We know pretty much what our costs are going to be for employees, for benefits. We can project pretty well the cost of utilities and those kinds of things, gas, transportation costs, supplies. It's the revenue side that becomes a little more tricky. We know approximately, we know pretty carefully what we're going to get with from our real estate taxes, and that represents about 82% of our revenue. 82% comes from real estate taxes. And we're pretty close there. Sometimes it varies for some anomalies that occur at the county level. But it's the state and federal and other sources of revenue that sometimes we're having a difficult time getting a handle on. The state doesn't create their budget until after we've already adopted a budget, so we're not sure exactly what the state's going to come through with. Same is true for the federal government. Sometimes we have to guess because they haven't really given us a determination of how much they're going to fund it. So anyhow, we start with this $9.6 million deficit. We just learned recently that we are going to get $177,000 more in transportation reimbursement from the state. We're required to transport students that live a mile and a half away or more from the school district, or students that have to cross hazardous crossings to get to school. We're required to provide that transportation to them. The state reimburses us for about 75% of those costs. We found out we're just getting a little bit more, $177,000 in the current fiscal year. So that brings it down to 9.4. We found that budgets normally are only spent about 99% of them, and so we're going to have a 1% left over because people don't always spend 100% of their budgets. They don't spend every penny of a dollar. They usually spend about 99 cents. They don't want to go over because they know they get in trouble, so they stop short. We end up with about 1% of unused budget funds at the end of the year. That's $1.5 million. That brings us down to 7.9. Then we started looking for maybe some things that would have the least impact on the district and started with those. Even small amounts like $5,000, we're going to eliminate paper copies of our district newsletter next year. Small step, but it adds up. $5,000. We think that we are going to see some energy savings next year through efficiencies. We've replaced our more expensive tube lighting in the fluorescent lights with more energy efficiency. Instead of having all 4 T12 lights on, we can have 2 T8 lights on. They take less wattage, less energy. We think also turning lights off, having the heat a couple degrees lower in the buildings during the winter, a couple degrees higher in the summer. Some other energy efficiencies, we think we get about $150,000 from that. We looked at the line items that had supplies, purchase services, and equipment. These are from the education fund, the operation and maintenance fund, and the transportation fund. And supplies, paper, books, all the kinds of things that you need to operate a school district. Purchase services are those contracts that we have with people and those things that we have provided from the outside, people that come in to do those things. So purchase services, equipment that we would have purchased that we normally would purchase, maybe some technology, cut back a little on computers, cut back on some other equipment that we wouldn't want to really cut back, but that's an area that we think we can get by with. That produces about a $700,000 savings. So now we're down to 7.1. Principals, annually, we're getting a $1,000 professional development allotment. They would use this to pay for their professional dues, to buy books that they could use to grow and learn about things. They took these funds to go to administrator academies where they learned new concepts to bring back to the buildings. The principals pretty much were in agreement that they could live without this $20,000. Yeah, please.
What is the salary for this?
I don't have that right with Scott. Do you remember?
What is $1,000?
I think our average administrative salary is about $104,000. I think that's about the average one.
Thank you.
So that's about 1%. We looked at the transportation department. We thought that we could save $60,000 there by eliminating one position. We thought that perhaps we could reduce the number of administrators in the district and by one administrator, and that would save us $91,000. The Department of Instruction looked at their department. They've really been trimmed down. We're a pretty lean organization, but they thought that they could save $50,000 in their department. Environmental Services is our custodial and maintenance department, and we think that we can cut back on our custodial services to the tune of about $156,000. That gets us down to $6.7 million. So we're in the hole still for next year's budget. A couple other reductions in transportation and maintenance at $39,000 each. If we closed the buildings during winter break and saw some reduction in energy costs, we think we can save about $10,000 there. Our business office provides the schools with a budget amount per child every year. So each building gets approximately anywhere from $50 to $70 per child that they can use to buy supplies and run their building. And so we cut that back by $4 per child, gives us the $48,000 in savings. We talked about our senior exchange program. This is the program where we have seniors that come in and work in the district. They provide a wonderful service. They really are doing a great job for us. They're usually less expensive than our program assistants. They do some great things, and they really add to the experience the kids have in the district, and the teachers really rely upon them for many things. They can earn up to the amount of money that they pay to District 15 on the real estate taxes. So that program has been in existence for a long time. We have a lot of people that do that, but we think this is a possibility. Remember, these are only possible solutions, not ones that we're saying absolutely will come into effect. But we changed the senior exchange program to a voluntary program. We let people to come in, but they wouldn't be compensated. We'd save $153,000 a year. So this column here comes up to a total of $3.2 million, and we're still about $6.4 million away from our 9.6. So then we get to the next list of items that they don't really have a dollar amount attached to them, but we think that we can come close, if not get to the $6.4 million through some combination of these reductions and these savings. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about them, and again, there'll be time for questions later. If you want to interrupt me, please do that as well. We have more program assistants in our district than most of the surrounding school districts have. And we think that despite how valuable they are, there probably is some areas that we can cut back and trim back to save some money with our program assistants. These are the people that work in classrooms with kids, with teachers. They're people that work with kids that have special needs, kids that have reading difficulties. They work with them in the reading labs. We have bilingual PAs that speak Spanish or another language, and they work with those groups of kids that are learning English. So these are important positions, but we think there is some potential for saving there. With many of these things, yes?
How much of the FTA is driven by the policies the district has on inclusion? Like you're talking about, they help kids with special needs.
There are several factors that drive the amount of program assistance we have in the district. We're federally required to provide program assistance to special needs students if their IEP indicates that their individualized education plan, which is a legal federal document, if it says that we have to have a PA, then we're required to provide that. For our bilingual program and our reading program, our bilingual, we're not required to have them. Very important if we want these kids to assimilate into the culture and learn the language, but they're not required. Our reading PAs are required by our contract with our Teachers Association. Many of the PAs that are in regular class, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Many of our PAs in the regular ed setting are also dictated by our contract with our Teachers Association. The total amount of our budget for PAs with salaries and benefits is a little over $10 million. $10 million out of a $149, $150 million budget. So that gives you an idea of the amount of money that's spent on PAs. And so we think that there's a potential for some reduction there and some savings there. We have many extracurricular options for students. We think these are beneficial. It helps them do better in their academics, makes them a more well-rounded student. But we think that there is some potential to cut back here and to save some money. Well, there are a wide range of extracurricular opportunities. We have sports, volleyball, basketball, track, cross-country, soccer. Soccer is really just an intramural sport. We have intramurals. And then we have programs like, Mary, help me out. We have spelling bee. We have yearbook.
All the choirs, all the courses.
Choirs, yeah.
All the jazz bands.
Jazz
and
bands,
choirs.
those kind of things. Robin?
Getting back to the PA, I'm wondering, do you have a number of the average classroom size that does not include your special ed classrooms, which would skew the numbers? Usually your special ed would be 5 to 6 or 10, and yet in a regular classroom, sometimes you may be running at 28.
Let me finish this one, and then I'll come back. That's a good question. I see if I can get a sense of that. So those are the kinds of things, academic bowls, Lego League kinds of things. They're extracurriculars that extend the school day for children. Mary, are there some also for helping kids with interventions after school? Are those considered extracurricular stipends?
No.
No, okay. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about.
So are you talking about regular band programming or just after-school band programming? Like, say at the junior high level, jazz band would meet beforehand, but band meets during school.
This is just the extracurricular outside of the school day, on that line item.
Outside of school.
But like in band for elementary, that is out of school time.
Right,
So
and
would that be included?
you'll see that coming down.
That's the
later
second
on
one from the
list.
bottom. That's not the extracurricular.
Just think it's anything band in the junior high, and jazz band. Jazz band is a different band outside of the regular.
Jazz band, I think, would be an example of an extracurricular stipend. It's something beyond the normal, regular curricular option. So it's those kinds of items that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to get back to Robin for a second. Robin, Jim, I don't think we actually do. Do you have an answer for Robin?
Yeah, in a self-contained special ed classroom, there's a legal maximum amount of students you can have in there with one teacher. If you add a full-time program assistant to that room, you can extend the amount of kids that are in there, so it turns out to be more economical to have the full-time aide in a self-contained classroom, and you can go up to 15 self-contained children. Those are our children that are more impacted by special needs than our kids who are in the regular classroom and get some auxiliary services. So,
But then the regular classroom size, what's the number sitting at?
yeah, and there's a formula that's in the teacher's contract in terms of getting program assistants for a building. For every single classroom you have, a full-day classroom, you get 1 hour for that building. If you have 30 kids in a classroom, you get an extra hour for that building. If it's 32, you get 2 extra hours. If it's a multi-age classroom, like a 3rd grade and 4th grade combined in one room, you get an extra hour that way. So it kind of depends upon the makeup of the building in terms of what the class sizes look like in a particular building and whether they have multi-age classrooms. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Two-part, what is the average PA salary and what is the average extracurricular stipend?
The average PA salary, including benefits, is about $25,000.
25?
That's salary and benefits.
Okay.
25.
And the extracurricular stipend?
Yeah, and the extracurricular stipends are different for every single position. So if it could range, it could range from, say, like $3,000 if you did,
Girls basketball coach at Plum Grove, or any junior high, just an average,
so like a seasonal
yeah,
type one?
yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you just tell us what's that budget line?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
the
just how much
whole,
are stipends? I mean, $10 million, $5 million?
no, the whole extracurricular stipend budget from the district pot of money is about between $525,000 and $550,000. And then there are additional stipends that are paid out of the building budgets depending on what, clubs that individual schools offer. So probably total between, the two of them, you're probably talking close to $600,000 that we
Where does
pay
the
out
building money
yearly.
come from?
Pardon?
Where do you draw the distinction? Where does the building money come from?
The building money comes from,
The district.
the,
So
di-
this is
yeah, but I mean, like, and they have a say, over like where their money goes. So it's about, our whole total extracurricular program is close to $600,000.
You're making statements based on a teacher's contract that exists today, that I respect must be adhered to. But that contract is up for renewal. Things such as after-school activities. If a parent were to volunteer to run the volleyball tournament, that doesn't have to be budgeted from the teacher's contract. The teacher's contract should not be dictating to us those dollars spent. If I say, we as a community would like to have more parental volunteers to cover these things, that saves us dollars.
So you're
That you're
offering
not presenting.
suggestions, right?
It's a suggestion.
And we're going to take all suggestions and, look at them after our meetings with all the stakeholder groups, and we're going to try to come up with the best possible plan and we'll present to the board. So that's definitely one that we can consider.
I think, have you done any projections based on possible scenarios like maybe 10% cut in real estate taxes, 20%, 40%, anything like that? Or you're just assuming that real estate taxes will go up? I mean, if, for example, real estate taxes will cut 10%, do you have some sort of projections?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned the reduction in the PAs that you have by contract, special needs and the reading have to have a certain amount of PAs allocated. Do you have a percentage of how many PAs? I mean, quick math, I think, if my math is right, 10 million with that 25,000 average PA, that's about 400 PAs. Do you have a breakdown of where those PAs are allocated in that system? And how are you going to lower it if by contract 2 of the 3 that you mentioned are dictated by the teacher's contract?
We have to only deal with the part that we have control
Okay.
over. And so we couldn't possibly cut 10 million.
No, I understand that.
But I think about 20% of all of those allocations, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, 20% of those allocations are for regular ed aides, and we maybe have control of 50% of those people. So we probably have anywhere from $1 million to $2.5 million that we could actually control ourselves that are non-contractual.
Okay, the regular aid, the bilingual, the special needs, and the reading are the 4 areas that PAs work in? Or is regular and bilingual the same?
They're different.
Okay.
They come from the same formula that's built into the contract, and out of that $10 million number, about half of those, a little under half, is special ed. Those are the ones we have probably the least flexibility in terms of reducing, because that comes from federal, guidelines. The other half is what's built into our teacher contract, and that, we potentially can look to make modifications to if we can reach agreements.
Yeah, I may have missed this. What was the goal of this plan? Was it to maintain the existing fund balance for the next 5 years? I don't know if I heard that.
The goal is to correct the structural deficit so that in the future, our expenditures are in line with our revenues, so that we're not going into the red in our budgets.
Right. But obviously, these figures are based upon a plan with a goal in mind. I mean, of dollar amount. So, I mean, is that, whatever the, I don't know what the fund balance is right now, but are we trying to keep that fund balance the way it is, looking 5 years out in the future?
The school board has asked us to have a minimum of 30% of our annual operating budget in reserves.
Okay.
So at $150 million in annual operating budget, we would need $45 million in reserves to meet that 30%. Now, the board could change that number.
Okay.
The state of education, in order to have the highest rating in their financial awards that they give you, requires 25%. So I would imagine that a good financial plan would be someplace between 25 and 30% of the fund balance. Okay.
Two things. Getting back to these extracurricular stipends.
Can you guys in the front talk out?
Yeah, with regard to the extracurricular stipends, I think what people are concerned about with those kinds of things are these legitimate educational needs, or are these teacher contract driven after school babysitting on campus? Okay, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and it's just because parents aren't home and they want to keep the kid occupied, and I'm telling them, so I won't get to it. But one thing I don't want to do is, if we're paying so that the kids can run around and kick the ball around, let's stay at home and kick the ball around. I mean, those kinds of things don't have to be a new salary-driven kind of an enterprise. So the fact that you do want to reduce them is great. I think we need to look at it individually and make sure that they're really necessities. Mm-hmm. And also on the, we were talking about this reserve requirement. How does the board base decide on 30% reserve? I mean, that is just huge on the tax rate. 30% of the money, just there, just because. Especially now, when home values are going down and taxes are going up. And it just seems really excessive. I don't know that many businesses that have the luxury of having a 30% reserve fund. That just seems excessive. I don't know what you're thinking.
I know it could. As I said, the state recommends a 25% fund balance, and that's because of the way our revenues are derived. Many, a large percentage of them, those outside of the real estate taxes, we are unsure of, even into the budget year that we've got going on. So the governor at any time could decide to cut our transportation funding, which is $5 million. That'd be a huge hit. If we didn't have reserves of $5 million and the governor cut that, we would be in really bad shape. So we have to have some funds available for some of those things.
Well, I know there needs to be some.
No, that's a good question. What is? And I think the board is interested, in hearing from you about what would be a reasonable amount. And, I'd like to talk a little more about that. But yes.
Maybe this gentleman, we get to the solutions. What is structural about the deficit? We use the word structural. That means there's like a chronic, ongoing causal factor, and that's not been mentioned at all. Is it there's a monotonically decreasing revenue stream, or is it ever increasing, or we have divergent revenue from, and why?
Our revenue stream has been increasing, but it's not been keeping up with our spending. And the reason that our spending is more is because of associated costs with running the district. And 85% of those are salary and benefits. Healthcare costs have been going up at a really high rate. Mike, today at the meeting we had with the staff members, the healthcare industry is telling him that he can anticipate healthcare costs going up 10% a year. Our healthcare costs right now are about $18 million a year for the entire district. 10% of that is $1.8 million. Our increase in real estate tax last year was about $2 million. So healthcare costs alone ate up almost the entire increase that we got from real estate taxes. So we have expenditures